Hi everybody, welcome back to our wondrous journey down the road of factoring quadratics. We have looked at how to common factor. We've looked at how to factor trinomials when there is no number with the x squared. It's a bit of a lie, there's actually the number 1 with the x squared, but we never paid attention to it. Today we're going to look at what happens when there is a number with the x squared and we can't get rid of it. So first things first, let's look at factor by grouping. And factor by grouping means we're going to break the equation up into two pieces. We're going to factor the first part, and then we're going to turn around and factor the second part. These two terms match, so they make up my first brackets, and we're done. Give it a shot. All right, so as I said at the onset, anyways, we've learned how to factor when a equals 1, or when there's no number with the x squared where there's a 1 there. And we've learned how to factor when you can factor out a value. But what happens when you can't get rid of a number with the x squared? Well, that is the focus of today's lesson. Rule number 1, factor out any common terms if possible. Times a and c. So before we needed two numbers that multiplied to give you c. Now it's two numbers that multiply to give you ac. This one actually is no different than it was before. This is just a long-winded way of saying same two numbers adds to give you that middle number. Rewrite the middle term as two terms, so this is the decomposition step. Factor by grouping, which we just reviewed, and then double check your answers by FOIL. On a test, on an assignment where you don't have the answers, yes, you should check your answer by FOIL to make sure that you got it right. There really is no excuse to hand in a wrong answer in this stuff. When you're doing homework, you'll probably just check in the back of the textbook. So, example 1. There's no greatest common factor. So step 1 is taken care of. Step 2, I tend to do it, before it was RS, now it's ARS. So what we're doing is we're taking the 2 and the 2 and timesing them. So that's a 4, and R plus S gives us 5, just like it did before. Now, this is a weird one. Having taught math for as long as I have, I find that students often overlook this as a solution. Don't know why, they just do. Break it up and start solving. Now here there is no factor, but we need to have a second one of those, so we're going to just simply put brackets around it. Now there's no number in front, which means really there's a 1, we just don't write it out. So when I write this out, it's got to have that plus 1. Give it a shot if you're confident, otherwise if you're not, just follow along. Got to look for that GCF first. So in this case, I can factor out a 2. So take my a, times it by my c, that's where the negative 10 comes from. And my middle term is no different, which means I'm looking at, what am I looking at? Oh, I just finished saying it's often overlooked, and here it is again. We're looking at a positive 9, so it's a negative 1. Now, notice we don't do anything else with the 2. It doesn't disappear, it stays, okay? I've learned students have a habit of going, well, I didn't do anything with it, so I didn't need to write it anymore. No. I said in an earlier lesson that going up and down, you should be able to recreate. If I were to expand this out, I should still have the 2 so that I can eventually recreate the 4. Short version is things just don't disappear. I need an a plus 5, so if I factor out the negative 1, then it's sorted. And just like the previous question, there's an imaginary 1 in front of there, so we got to have that minus 1. All right, definitely, well, give this one a shot if you can. No common, no common factor. Um, all right, if you haven't given it a shot, 100% give this one a try. No common factor. Now, hopefully you're comfortable enough that you've already figured this out. Um, you probably don't know this. I do more than one version of these tapings, or usually because I've made a mistake and I have to go over it again, or something happens, whatever. And in one of my previous ones, the first thing I did was 12 and 2, because if you do a negative 12 and a positive 2, that'll give you the negative 10, and 12 and 2 multiplied together gives you 24. Well, it doesn't work. It's negative 12 times 2 gives you a negative 24. So it doesn't satisfy the equation. And in my last version, I actually went through, started to do it, and found out that I didn't have common terms to factor out. So hopefully you recognize it before you get to that stage, because it's a whole lot of extra work you don't need to do. Unfortunately, I didn't, and I had to redo it. I cried and cried, but here we are, right back on the horse, doing more math for your enjoyment. Oh, that should be a 4. I will fix that up later. Don't worry, when the PDF comes out, it'll look nice and pretty. Or you could just look at the 4 underneath it. Okay, definitely, if you haven't tried it before, try it now. Now, I didn't have to factor out a negative 2. I could have just factored out a 2, but I'm willing to bet most of you will agree with me. It's a lot easier to work with the positive numbers if you can. And generally speaking, the convention is to try to have a positive x squared. I won't take away marks if you have a negative x squared, but wherever possible, most people prefer dealing with positive numbers. So I need two numbers that will multiply together to give me 56. And the same two numbers are going to add to give me negative 30. Now, I know this because I've done it on my sheets, but let's say you don't know this off the top of your head. I do believe I've shown you guys this before. And if I have, this is just me making my factor tree. So what numbers? 1 times 56 will give me 56, but there's no way to combine them to get 30. 2 times 28 will give me 56, and I can combine them to get 30 if they're both negative. So I've got my numbers. Okay, hopefully everybody is happy. Hopefully everybody is good. So what this means is that for is 2 ACE, 3 OCE, so on and so forth. 7A, 12, and 13. All right, everybody. This is arguably the most complicated lesson in the course. So if you survive this, should be downhill from here, at least until we hit trigonometry. Trigonometry will be a little, some anxiety, but it'll be the easiest subject that you ever struggle with. All right, guys. Have a good one.